Welcome to First in the Family, where we explore the world of breaking generational patterns and chains due to access, education, will, or sheer bravery. We celebrate the ways that these accomplishments can bring about joy. We honor the way that these changes can lead to discomfort and pain, and we grieve the sacrifices that all of it requires. My name is Ceci, and I am your host. Thank you for joining us. Let's see who's first. I'm very excited to introduce you to today's guest, Toni Graves Williamson. Toni Graves Williamson is Director of Equity and Inclusion at Friends Select School in Philadelphia. She's a principal consultant in the Glasgow Group and co-directs and facilitates the Race Institute for K-12 educators, which is a nonprofit organization that provides a space for educators to do the deep personal work of understanding their racial identities. Toni is also a contributing author to the Guide for White Women Who Teach Black Boys and Teaching Beautiful, Brilliant Black Girls. With her colleague, Allie Michael, Toni adapted Robin DiAngelo's well-known book, White Fragility, for young adults. Toni has a bachelor's degree from Duke University and 2 master's degrees, one from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro and one from Columbia University. She's a native and proud Southerner who currently resides in Philadelphia. Please welcome Toni. Hey, friends.
Unmute. Hello, how are you?
What's up? First, welcome. Welcome to First in the Family, friend.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm really excited to have you. My goal, I said this in like the email I sent you, but I'm trying not to make it like too structured so that we can like organically have a conversation, share stories, and see where it takes us. But I also read through everything you sent over and appreciate just kind of like thoughts and a little bit of ideas of where we could potentially go with the conversation. But there's no wrong way, is all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can dive right in if that's okay with you.
Sounds good to me.
All righty. So for the people listening, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do in the world?
Mm-hmm. So my name is Toni Graves Williamson. I am a diversity practitioner. That's my big title. And I do that in a few ways. I'm the co-director of the Race Institute for K-12 educators, which is a 3-day intensive workshop about racial identity for educators. And I also am a principal consultant for the Glasgow Group, which is a small but mighty consulting group that does DEI workshops across the country with mostly schools and boards. And then I also I have my own private independent consulting company, which is called Still Speaking Inc. That's brand new. But my main job, I do all those things. But the job that, I go to every day, I am the Director of Equity and Inclusion at Friends Select School in Philadelphia.
So in addition to your 14 jobs, you also are the first in the family to graduate from college, to attain multiple degrees, to move out of your hometown, to shift socioeconomic status, to decide not to have children, to switch religions or leave altogether, and to travel outside of the country.
Yeah.
That's big.
It is big. And that's my immediate family. So I have 2 sisters and my parents, but yeah, I was the first.
Wow. So,
and for many of those, the only still.
That's an added layer, I think. Well, first, I think it's important to just like acknowledge you and say like, nice work, right? Like, job well done, kudos to you. I know what it takes. It takes a lot to be able to name all of that. And part of the goal of this podcast is to honor and celebrate, like, you did that, right? Like, hey now, and while also holding that's hard.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that comes with it. And the first thing that stood out in your survey, I mean, there's so much, and I often have to like curb my enthusiasm because I'm trying to keep these episodes to an hour, even though I want to talk for 5. But the first thing that stood out to me that you included was the notion of leaving the family.
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell us the story that you mentioned about your nephew?
Mm-hmm. It was a little bit of a surprise to me to hear my dad say, I know that he would love for our family to just be in the house forever. But it was 2010, and my nephew had just graduated from high school and had been accepted into Guilford College, which is about 20-30 minutes away from my family in Greensboro. And my dad said to my nephew, I hope you don't leave the family like Toni did. And at the time, I was living in Durham, North Carolina. If you know any of geography in North Carolina, it's about an hour from Weedsville, where I grew up. And
Not that far.
not that far. And I came home often, like at least 1 week in a month, sometimes 2 weekends. I still sang in the church choir.
Oh.
It was baffling to me, but I didn't argue the point. You didn't do that with my dad. But I just kept it in, just knowing that it is so important for family to be close. My grandparents lived not like on the same property as us, almost in the same house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I won't even say next door. There was a driveway in between my house and my grandparents' trailer. So yeah, it meant a lot to him. So I wasn't gonna interrupt that thought pattern for him, but I
Yeah.
will never forget it. And my dad passed away later that year, and I moved to
Sorry.
Philadelphia the year after.
Sorry, Daddy.
Yeah.
So I think this is an interesting place to start, because part of what, like, the conversations I've been having and part of the narrative that was taught to me, I don't know if this resonates with you, is the goal is to sort of succeed, overcome, and like get out, so to
Mhm.
speak. And so when I read that, I was like, ouch.
Mm.
Like, isn't this what we're wired, what we're taught
Mhm.
to do? And then, so I'm curious if that's the way it landed, or like, how did you, I know you didn't say something in the moment, because like, you don't argue with daddy, but later on, like, how did you unpack that, and what kind of impact did it have?
It still kind of rings in my ears. But what I will say is, I'm a whole lot like my dad, and it wasn't until after, like, the process that I've done since he passed away, is that my adventurous spirit is the same as his. He just
Mm,
started off from being born in a house that had, straw pillows, and he didn't have enough money for food. He started in a different place than me. But my dad
mm,
was extremely successful, to not have a high school diploma. He owned his own
mm,
business for
mm,
25 years. He worked his way up. And
mm,
I actually feel like it was divine when, in terms of the doors that started opening for me to move after he passed away. And I feel like it was almost like him from beyond saying, "Oh, I get it. I get it. This kid
mm.
is me, and this is who she's being." So honestly, after he passed away, all these doors opened up. I had 3 different jobs to choose from, all
Wow.
away from North Carolina.
Wow. So it's like him giving your blessing and being
Hmm.
like, my bad, I didn't get it, but now I get it.
Yeah, I'm
That's
a whole lot like him. So like, oh, I'll try that. Oh, I can do
wow.
that. Oh,
Wow.
what do you mean? I can write a book, hold a full-time job, and still consult. I could do it. So that was him.
That's beautiful. What is that part like though? Um, how do you make sense of all the things that you're doing? Is that part of like, gotta keep grinding? Is there something that's motivating you? Is it the daddy I love just to explore? Or like, is there some first in the familyness showing
Mm,
up? Because you're doing a lot. It's very impressive, but
mhm.
what's behind the curtain?
Yeah. So there's a Venn diagram of the work that I do. I don't think I could do the consulting work if my full-time job wasn't directly related to DEI. So I'm able to be in a lot of spaces, with folks who are then I'm like, oh, I'd love to come and work at your school. I was just at a school down in DC, yes, or near DC yesterday, working with the faculty, on Quakerism and diversity, like how Quakerism and diversity overlap, or to me, or you can't pull them apart. And so I work at a Quaker school and do this work. So it's clearly related. I can use the same slides from one presentation to the next. So there's one piece, there is an overlap. But the other piece is that I am, this might sound a little Pollyanna, but I actually feel like I can be one of the ones that work to eradicate racism. That happened in my lifetime, but I'm determined to do all that I can in order to do that. I have some skills and talents, and I've been put in some places where I have to continue to have the conversation. So I'm motivated by that, and the only way to really change things is to do the work. So.
I like that. I like that. It very much feels like you're calling. I like that. I appreciate that. And having been on the other side of like receiving your facilitation and consulting, and I can attest to that. I think you're masterful at it. So I think you're definitely on the right path, the right journey. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I will say the groups that I work with, like the Glasgow Group, and also the work that I do with the Race Institute, I am also filled by the folks, my coworkers, that, I have a team of folks that I really get to work with all the time. And we get to have these conversations, and I feel like every day I'm like doing something to change the world. That's the Pollyanna part. People say you can change the world. I believe that I am working to do it, and working with young people to do that as well.
Yeah. I don't think that's Pollyanna. I think that's real, man.
Yeah.
I was actually just having a conversation with my husband about, I won't go to the whole thing. And we were talking about like what to do when we disagree. And which is a whole nother podcast. But part of what I was saying is, the DEI work, the work I do, anti-racism and coaching and all of that. I was like, there's no body of work more important to me than that. And so disagreeing with me in that regard feels different than if you disagree with like my choice in elected official or my approach to environmentalism. And I told him, like, I really do think this is like the future is on the line, like our children's lives are on the line. And so this is, we can't disagree too hard on a lot of these things because there's that much at stake for me. He's an engineer. He has a different type of brain and doesn't process those things. So maybe I'm Pollyanna too, but
but
I don't.
They have to have us out there, and believe I use the terminology. I think it's Dr. King, or the urgency of now. I think about that all the time. I don't have time to wait.
So where did this fire come from? Tell me a little bit about, like, so you're the first to do everything we just talked about. Tell me, like, paint the picture for listeners, like, where you from? How did this start? Like, where was the little Toni thinking about these things and getting the gumption to become the first to do all of this work?
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody that you've talked to on this podcast had this kind of upbringing, but I was a 4-H'er.
4-H.
Yeah. So what is 4-H? 4-H is I always say it's like the Girl Scouts, but co-ed, but it's not really like the Girl Scouts. It's a youth organization. And it was started through agricultural extension of, state funding. But 4-H, a lot of folks, when they hear it, they think about cows and chickens, because it's a lot of farm kids who, are part of 4-H clubs that raise their pig to take to the fair. That was all well and good. That was not what I did. 4-H had, they had all these opportunities to win scholarships, little scholarships, $25, $30. You could do, I was in the food fair where I had to come up with a a food item and had to understand the nutritional value around it. And they would come around and there'd be tasters, and if you participated, you got a $25 scholarship. I every I think it's June is Dairy Month. I drew a poster and found some grocery store to put a poster up about, the importance of drinking milk. I don't know if people would agree with that now. That was like a $25
That was
scholarship. But I did all these things, and what the scholarship would do is pay for adventures, I would say, in 4-H. So they run a bunch of camps in the summer. So I was able to go to camp. My sisters weren't, but I got involved in 4-H thanks to my Aunt Edie, who worked for the agricultural extension. She was like, we need a 4-H club and we need to get y'all involved. So my cousins and me, we all, and I bit the bug. I loved camping. I love going, I don't like to camp anymore, but when I was younger, I loved going to camp, and I learned how to swim there. It took me like 4 years of going back to camp every year to learn to swim, because I didn't have swimming lessons in between.
Yeah.
But I learned to swim there. I loved canoeing and like all those things I got to do every summer. And sometimes I got enough scholarship money to go to camp more than once in the summer. I also had this thing called 4-H Congress, which is you go to a college campus for a week and people are doing their demonstrations, but there's something called the 4-H Honor Club for people who have, achieved had a lot of achievements in the club. But it's like hundreds of kids from all over the state who get together to this 4-H Congress, and they elect officers for the incoming year. But it was I got to go to a college campus for a week for free.
Dope. That's
as long as my parents could give me some spending money, that's it. I never had to pay anything. You're supposed to, before you go to camp, you're supposed to go to the doctor, and Mama was like, can I just sign the thing and say we went to the, I don't even pay for that. Like, I was like, all right, yeah, I went to the doctor. Because you had to have a physical to go to camp. But it was like, it opened doors for me and got me out of Reidsville. Reidsville is my hometown. It really, and I love Reidsville. I don't want to badmouth anything about my childhood or people who make the decision to stay in the same zip code. I got no problem with that. It makes it easier for me to go visit. But I've learned that there were other people out there. So as I got older, I looked for other opportunities to do that. So North Carolina has a program called Governor School between your junior and senior year, where you can go for 6 weeks to a college campus. I focused on drama when I was there for those 6 weeks, but I met people again from all over the state. And it was where I met my first Jewish person, where I met my first atheist. It was I had to understand, like, what am I feeling? I was the first time I was able to do that outside of my family. And that was really what clicked, like, all right, I want to go to college. All right, I want to make sure to go to a university where I get to stay in a dorm. Like all those, that I think was the bedrock for that, was my involvement in 4-H.
I've never heard of this. That's so interesting. But I think there are like similar programs, right, that have given folks exposure, and I was in a better chance, which doesn't sound as fun, but definitely enabled me to just be exposed to other folks. So tell me a little bit about your family then. So the ideas of college and going out and doing all these different things, was that something that was like absent from the conversation at home, or what was that juxtaposition?
No, my parents required us to do at least 1 year of college. That was the expectation.
Oh, interesting.
The community college, but that was what they expected, 1 year of college. So both my sisters did 1 year of college. They've since gone back and gotten degrees. Okay. But at the time they were like, let's do this because I'm done with school. So they went to community college. It's funny, my dad didn't graduate from high school. My mom did graduate from high school, but like I said, it's like they're starting from a different point. And so they were looking for, I think my decision to go to a 4-year university was unexpected. When I decided in the 4th grade, I think, that I wanted to go to Duke University.
Did you?
Yeah, I decided in the 4th. Wow. I drove past it and was like, that's pretty. That's real pretty. And then I started learning it's actually a good university. And I was
Right.
like, what's the best university closest to home? And that's where I'm applying. I only applied to 2 places, but that's where I, started thinking I do want to go off to college. And then there was a different world TV show that came on after the Cosby Show, where folks were. I just had, I started getting glimpses into what could this be like, and so
Mhm.
was
A
that.
Different World was the first time I'd ever like seen college in that way,
Mhm.
and I was fascinated.
Yeah.
Like I would always watch the Cosby Show, and like people go away to school, right? And
Mhm.
that was interesting, and I knew like that concept, but A Different World, like I was too young to fully appreciate like all the jokes and all the like drama that was going on. But I remember watching like they're in school but they live together. It was so confusing to me and so like intriguing.
Mhm. Well, it was a big, that was what I had to look at. Now
Mm,
I have a huge family. My mom
okay.
has 11 siblings and my dad has a sister with 14 kids. So
Ooh,
I literally have over 40 cousins, first cousins.
ooh.
And so like I had some examples of folks like my aunties who did graduate from college. Almost everybody who graduated from college moved away and
Mm,
had their families in different places. But I have one aunt who went to A&T and she met her husband there. He was a pilot for the Army, and their kids all went to college. So there were all these other examples. But
mm.
the A Different World helped me start thinking, what do I want to be like when I go to college? I really wanted to be, more like Denise. Then she dropped out. But I don't know. I just loved that show.
Yeah,
And I remember, like you said, TV shows where somebody would go off to college.
yeah.
There's an episode of The Cosby Show, which I just rewatched recently,
Mm,
where Sandra, when she graduates from Princeton, decides not to go to law school.
mm.
And Claire has a fit. And she's like, you owe us $79,677, whatever it was. And I remember as a young kid thinking, oof, I can't ever afford
Ah,
college. So I have to work really hard because I need to get all the scholarships, not just one, I need all of them. I got to
that's
high
so
school and I was like,
funny.
how do you get a 4.0? Oh, you have to get all A's. I'm getting all A's. That's just there's my family
Wow.
is not going to be able to afford college. And my dad, when I got in, my sister actually, back then we got envelopes, and if you had a big envelope or a little envelope,
Yep.
I had a
Yep.
big envelope, and my sister was home, so she had checked the mail, and she brought the folder that said Duke over to my high school where I was having lunch, and she just held the folder up to the window, and like if I in my head is like the whole crowd in the cafeteria. I don't know if it was quite that fabulous, but when she left me, she went to my dad's. My dad owned a lawnmower business, and she said he dropped his head when he saw that I got in. And then she showed him my financial aid package. And he was like, I did not want to have to tell her she couldn't go. But I pretty much got a full ride to college. I
Mhm.
think my parents had to pay like $1,900 a year or something like that. Um, but then
Oh,
they told me I could still get student loans. And I was like, really? And when do you pay them back? After college? I'm like, I'll be rich
sign
then.
me up.
Sign me up. So I could have walked out of school with zero debt. That is not what happened.
Wow. So, okay, couple of things. First of all, I love that story. I literally saw the folder because I remember the envelopes. Now they don't do that. Now it's all like computerized and stuff, which I think is not as exciting. So I appreciate that visual. But so I think it's really fascinating how quickly you were able to like just know the cheat codes, and you were like, boom, I like that school, boom, oh grades, oh it's expensive too. Like I
Mhm.
don't think I was ever able, like until I was probably out of college, to
Mhm.
put it all together. Like, damn it, I should have majored in this. Damn
Yeah.
it, why did I take out those loans? Right? Like I don't how like that was just natural to you.
Well, I have a lot of oopsies.
Okay.
A whole lot. Like I don't know if I would have chosen Duke. If I had to go back, I decided in the fourth grade, like, what do I know as a fourth grader? But now that I know, work in private schools where our college counselors are so good and they give kids the opportunity to see little schools and big schools and really think about what is it that you need and what do you need in college. Even though Duke was a small university compared to a lot of the big schools, I was lost there. It was
Mm,
huge to me. Just in terms of what do I major in? I don't know. And I didn't realize that there were like places I could go on campus and talk to people about like, can you help me figure this out?
yeah.
So I feel like I took a bunch of random classes and then ended up majoring in what was easiest for me to get with how much time I had left.
Mm,
So if I had if I, if I had hindsight or I had more help, I think that I'm good with where I am in life, but I would have made some different choices based
yeah.
on who I know I am now.
Yeah. No, I hear that. And I think that's such a important part of being first that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough is like the first is celebrated, right? And you're
Mhm.
accepted and you get there, but that's just the beginning,
Yep.
right? And navigating classes, and I did not understand that fully, that every loan that I was getting would like be
Mhm.
compounded by interest for
Mhm.
years and years to come. So I was just like, okay, Bursa bill, cool. Swipe it. Like it didn't all click for me. Like I knew sort of, but I didn't. And part of that is like you're just navigating a completely foreign world.
Yep. It's a
Um,
different language.
it's a completely different language. So your fourth grade self made the decision, but you got there. Like, I'm sure I have to imagine there was a lot of praise
Mhm.
from the community.
Mhm.
But what was it like to take on, now you're leaving home, right? Like now it's like a step beyond maybe what was expected, right? Like you're gonna go beyond the 1 year minimum. You're
Mhm.
gonna go beyond the like up the street. So was that fully supported? Was there any like questioning of it? Did it feel like you could turn to your family, being that nobody could really relate to it?
Mhm. Well, I was very thankful for my cousins because I have so many cousins. There were many that were my age. So my cousin Bridget, she we call her Peaches. She went to North Carolina Central, which is also in Durham. It's an HBCU in Durham, and so we kind of she was a year ahead of me, so we kind of
Mm,
navigated Durham life together. Um, I have to say, what really helped me was when I decided I wanted to be a teacher.
mm,
And the program in education at Duke is so tiny. I think I had like 16 people in my whole graduating class that wanted to be teachers. And
wow.
so there was a whole lot of focused attention. Dr.
Mm,
Malone and Dr. Rigsby still work there. I still am connected to them. I
mm,
still come and I do workshops for them. I take them on civil rights field trips. We're still
nice.
connected. I think had I not found that little family of folks who saw me, I'm not sure
Mm,
what would have happened. I mean, I got by the skin of my teeth when you look at my GPA. Was not like high school. I found out very early on when I flunked my first class, oh, I'm not going to make straight A's here.
mm,
But falling into the program in education really helped me in my last 2 years to have a place to land.
mm, mm. And what was it like? You talked about it being basically a foreign language.
Hmm.
When so your cousin's sort of helping you out, but she's on a different campus. What was it like actually being on campus,
Hmm.
being surrounded by the students that go there, right?
Hmm.
Like, what did it actually look like at
Yeah. So
night or, behind the scenes?
I have to say, like when I remember I was pretty conservative Christian when I got there. And so I was a member of several like Christian organizations, which were all white. Every single one of them were all white. Um,
Mm,
and so I never was home there, even though we had this shared religious connection. And I had already started to, in my own like religious life started to poke holes in some of my beliefs, but it was not safe for me to say that. So I drifted from them and never really found, I don't go to college reunions because I'm not connected to anybody that I went to college with except for my roommate. And we have she and I have long conversations every other year or so. We talk for like 2 hours and that's it. And then my best friend from high school ended up following me. She was 2 years younger, 2 years below me. So she ended up following me there. So she and I still keep in contact, but nobody else. I never found my tribe there. To use that language that you used before, that was not what Duke gave me. I was in the band, the marching band, so I was able to go to every single Duke basketball game. I'm a huge Duke basketball fan. So there were things I found, but they weren't my people. I was my closest friend in band was a very rich girl from Long Island, who was also just as out of place with a lot of the you would call band geeks. She and I both were like on these total opposite ends, but we found each other because we're like, we're not like the rest of these people. But we want to go to all the Duke games, and we love playing the instrument. So I found my little pockets, but nothing that helped to keep me grounded, or even people I want to continue to have in my life, to be honest. So
I think there's something so powerful about, not powerful, but there's like this big missing, right? That's, I think a lot of schools are addressing now, right? Like X number of years later. But I think there were so many stories, right, of folks who are on these campuses who are applauded, lauded, celebrated for gaining access, right, and surmounting whatever they had to surmount to get there, and then only to be kind of left to their own devices. And I think that's the part that really is the premise of the show, right? Is like that part, right? When you're actually doing the things, getting the class, getting the degree, that's the hard part that often goes unnoticed.
This is, I have to say, recently, I guess a couple years ago, when the celebrities that got in trouble for paying their kids' way through school, that was so uplifting and empowering for me, because I did that shit by myself.
Yes.
I had somebody who was paying a tutor. I got zero tutoring. I got zero, help me out to, do this one class or do this study abroad program. No, I did all on my own. I was like, I am smart. Because in school, in college, I found that a lot of my classmates had gone to prep schools, and they had their hand in the air before the question even came out of the teachers' mouths. And they were really good at, especially the white boys. I remember one class in particular, we would get to class early. We used to have a lot of reading assignments. I read every single thing for that class, and I'm a slow reader, but I read everything. I was very intrigued. It was a class called Politics and the Libido.
Oh, damn.
And it was in 1990. When was it? 1998. Yeah, that's when the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky. So can you imagine? Wouldn't you read everything? I was so intrigued.
That sounds fascinating.
Yes. We would get to class early and kind of talk through the reading. I had done all the reading, and they had done all the listening to folks. And then, but when the teacher got there, they had their hands in the air, and they were the biggest BSers that I ever saw in my life. And I get a C, and my teacher says, you needed to participate in class more. And so I have lots of little stories like that of where I was like, I can't get my hand in the air fast enough. So by the time I got to grad school, my second master's degree, we had a class. I remember it was on John Dewey, and John Dewey's work is so thick, but so fascinating. And so what I did was I went to my teacher and I said, I am not going to have my hand in the air as fast. I would like you to ask me questions specifically. Class discussions, if you think it's a question that I can answer, whether I know the right answer or not. If there are sometimes you could just say, Toni, so what did you think about the blah, blah, blah? So I don't have that anxiety of, can I get my hand in the air? So I had learned by that point how to make that work. I wish somebody would have told me that, in undergrad.
100%. That's, first of all, that's impressive that I know it took a few years, but that you were able to say that, because that's hard. And there's so much about these institutions that, again, these unspoken rules, these cultural norms that are just learned, just seen, observed. One of my friends called it, they talk about it at the white people meeting, but I don't think folks realize how much is lost in those moments. I had the almost exact same experience. My first 2 years of college, I was the prep school kid. Now, I was from the hood. I got the scholarship to the prep school. So in the prep school, I was also lost and unsure, but I felt like, okay, I can do this. Like, I can do university, Ivy League. Like, I've been doing it for 4 years. And then I got to Penn and it was a whole nother level. And same thing, a lot of BSing, a lot of stating the question in the answer, like things that I had just not learned to do. And it felt like I was right back in 8th grade at the same lost level I was when I got to 9th grade with all these rich kids that just knew how to do everything. And I often share, and you probably have heard me share this in a race institute, when we talk to educators, that part of how I navigated like high school, and then in college, I had similar sort of exercises, would be like at nighttime, I would, read through everything, try to prepare, try to practice. And then I would also practice enunciating words the way that my white counterparts did, so that I could show up in class and at least sound what I thought was smart. Right. Because I had this New York accent. I was from New York, and I was like, that in my head, that was associated with like dumb. Right. Like and they called us the poor kids. So the poor kids sounded a certain way. They couldn't answer the right questions. So I knew that I had to get rid of that. And in college, I did some similar things, right? Like over reading, over preparing. I would write down like, these are at least the 2 points I can try to make, right? So that I don't know what everybody else is doing, but at least I could try to like somewhere be like, oh, okay, I prepped for that one. And that was my way of, I guess, coping, right? Surviving in these white spaces. But did you have your go-to things? Like how did you feel like you coped?
Yeah. So it wasn't in the classroom, right?
Okay.
So like I said, when I got to the program in education, but that wasn't until junior year. One thing that I did was, I guess when I was in high school, I was always looking for the free stuff. So Duke actually had, I think it was like 2 nights, you go to Duke, it was called SCOPE, the Student Conference on Policies in Education. And you would hear from all these legislators, and there was a theme. I think our theme when I was a student was school violence. And you hear from legislators, you'd hear from speakers, and then you and your cohort would create policy that we would then bind and give to North Carolina legislators.
Wow.
So when I got to Duke, I was like, I definitely have to help out with SCOPE. And then I ended up running SCOPE. So by sophomore year, I was bringing in 80 to 100 high school students to Duke every year, making sure they got fed, making sure we had speakers, if I could have majored in something at Duke, if I could have majored in SCOPE, that's what it would have been. But there was nobody to say, Toni, these things that you were doing actually support what could be your major, what could be what you're doing next. I was just doing it because I was passionate about it. Passionate about like instilling those leadership skills into kids that might not have been able to afford it. And I remember I had to go out and like raise money so that we could pay. And I look back now, I was like, nobody taught me how to do that. That just came from I want to be able to get this kind of education, because I think it's way more than what you're doing in the classroom. Those experiences, I mean, going back to 4-H, those experiences that get you out of your zip code is what makes a huge difference. So
Mm,
That was one place that I found just a lot of success. A lot of,
wow.
mhm,
That's really
mhm.
impressive. By your
I
sophomore
forget about
year?
sometimes. Yeah, by sophomore year, I was running it. And I remember I co-led it that year. And I remember the seniors who were passing it on to me didn't think that I was ready. So
Mm.
they paired me up. They were like, you and Robin can co-lead this. And Robin didn't do nothing. I was like, she just got in my way. But yeah, junior and senior year, I then led it on my own and then passed it off to um, my best friend when I left.
Oh man.
Mhm.
That's
Sorry,
My Siri's trying to talk to me. Sorry.
oh hey Siri. Um I'm impressed. I feel like you were born with a programming that I never received.
Mhm.
But no, but what's interesting is that these are the kind of things that get activated when you're in these spaces, right? Like it's easy for me to be like, oh, how genius and impressive um as we look back, right? 20
Mhm.
years, but in the moment, these are the things that literally keep you
Yeah.
grounded, surviving, connected, and not quitting. So I appreciate the genius of it and like the realness of it.
Well, Duke has a program called that where you don't have a major, it's called Program 2, and you kind of put your classes together. You have to have a advisor that helps you. I
Mm.
didn't do that because I didn't know to do that, but that's what I should have done because scope could have been right in there. I could have taken more public policy courses because in my head, I didn't know the difference between political science, which is what I ended up majoring in, and public policy. Public
Mm,
policy would have been totally more my jam than political
right,
science.
right.
Like I said, I just picked the classes, like that's how I can get a degree fat. I'll do that one. Um, and didn't take like here's what I'm passionate about. How do I make Duke fit into this?
Yeah,
I think I felt I say this a lot to my students that go to private school. Like this is your school. Yes, they're doing you a favor by giving you the scholarship to come here, but you're doing the school a favor by being here.
right.
Right. I felt like I went through 4 years of Duke in a space of thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yep.
And not I am
Mm,
an asset to the school.
mm,
I never ever had that feeling at all. And
mm,
as I look back now and think about those kinds of things that I did accomplish, like that I was good for Duke.
mm. Girl,
That took me
that's
a long time to be able to realize. So I try to tell my babies at school that all the time, like, and the families. So it's not
yeah,
just the kids that come to school to my school now and think, I don't feel like this is home. It's also the
yeah,
family. Like I'm dropping my kid off here, but this is not my community.
yeah, yeah. How do you think like especially these giant universities where it's easy for anybody to get lost, especially if you're the first in the family to navigate these worlds?
Mhm.
What are some of the things that you wish you had during
Mhm.
those years that um, you know, could help ease that transition?
Mhm. I wish that I had a person like the work that I get to do at school, like a diversity practitioner. I wish
Mm,
that Duke had that. Somebody I could go to and speak shorthand to. I'm not getting
mm,
this, or like my kids come to me and say, "Where do you keep the lotion?"
mm,
Things that we as a culture um, get without
yeah,
explanation. So I wish I
yeah.
could have found more places like that, whether that is through a practitioner or I didn't. Duke had a Black student union, but one thing is in high school, I had I took all honors classes and I was almost always the only Black child in my class.
Mm,
So I had a hard time navigating with Black students at Duke. I didn't feel
mm,
Black enough because I had this twang talking about accents. I had this country twang that still pop out. And I also didn't listen to the same I don't know. I just
yeah.
whatever Black was, I wasn't it enough. And so I didn't hang out. I didn't feel comfortable going to BSU. I
Mm,
wish that sometimes I look back and I'm like, it would have been really cool to go to an HBCU so I could see many different ways of being Black. And
Yeah.
oh, those are my Black people. This is, oh, Black people could be like that too. And I felt like at Duke, well, if you weren't this kind of Black, then you were, a white person lover. They call it a honky lover.
Mm.
So that was interesting, right?
That's especially since you're still in the South, which is funny. Well, I always talk to people that my college was the first time I had met Black and brown people in my whole life who had wealth and whose parents went to college and grandparents went to college and had houses. I was like, what? Like literally the only folks that I'd seen like that were on TV was the Cosbys. And
Yep.
and I also went through a similar thing. So you did it.
Yep.
Hooray, you did it. And then you did it again and got another degree, and then you did it again and got another degree.
That's it. I'm not doing that. People, are you going to get your, nope.
I'm good.
Dr. William, nope, I'm good.
And I'm guessing every time maybe like with a stronger understanding of your own needs and awareness and wherewithal to sustain you in a different way, I imagine, especially with the work that you do. But now, like, you've been in different career spaces for a while with this lens of D&I, but still, like, the first in your family, like we talked about already, to shift socioeconomic status, to get out of your hometown. Now you're in Philly, been there for a little while. Are there moments that still feel like foreign and like you're that 18-year-old trying to figure out which classes to take?
Less and less so.
Okay.
I think when I was at UNCG, that's where I got my first master's degree. It's right down the street from my family. I felt, because I was a graduate student and most of the classes that I was taking were, because I was an older graduate student, then most of the classes that I was taking were with folks who were, early 20s, and I was late 20s. And so, of course, those 7-8 years made all the world of difference, but I felt like I was the professional. I was already teaching. So that UNCG was a completely different experience. Really good education there, by the way. I had such good teachers in that program. But when I got to Columbia for my second master's degree, I was back at Duke again in my head. I had learned some coping techniques. But what I think really was different about that program was it was a program specifically for private school leadership. And there were 45 of us in the cohort, and I think 15 of us were people of color. And so I had this network of people who got it. And it's like one of my closest friends grew up in Baltimore. He was in the program, grew up in Baltimore, very poor, got to go to private schools, ended up at Harvard, and was so unapologetic for his brilliance that I was like, oh, I want that. Like, I want to have some of that chutzpah. So having that, now having that circle of friends that I still am connected with from grad school, I don't have those places as much of where I feel like I don't belong. If I'm teaching people about belonging, then I have to figure out how I belong too. Like, I have to be able to talk to. I'll tell you where I do feel it most. When I think, so we talk about changed socioeconomic statuses. When I'm with my colleagues who have like summer homes, and they go for a month in the summer to, like, how do they, I don't know. I don't know how they do it. Or, or when I went to my friend's house and she cooked dinner and she had fennel on the, I'm like, what is, will I like fennel? Is that a thing? I'm just less embarrassed now to say, what is fennel?
Right.
Right. But there are still places like that where it'll pop up like, oh, wine is another thing. Like, I don't really get all that much difference. And I know I like red wine, And I think Cabernet is better than Pinot Noir, but I don't really know. And I'll
Yeah.
go to a place and somebody will be like, "Oh, I had that type of wine last week." I'm like, "I don't know. I got the one in the bottle." So there are little places like that where I still feel like I'm out of place. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Do you
definitely. And
have,
when I don't even realize it sometimes.
yeah, no, I totally relate to that. What are your, like, do you have mantras, coping? Like, do you have to ground yourself in that moment, or is it just kind
Yeah.
of easier to navigate?
Because I tell my students this, I have to be unapologetic and say, "What is fennel?"
Right.
Or I don't know what the different types of wine be okay with being humble in that way helps me feel more authentic and a reminder of there's nothing wrong with me,
Yes.
you know. I just don't know that. And there are things that I know that other people don't, you know.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with me. I don't have to know it all.
Mm, there's
Knowing
nothing
more
wrong.
stuff than somebody else doesn't make you smarter than them. I think that's been a big epiphany for me, even within the last 10 years, you know.
I gotta
Because you
write
don't
that
have a
down.
vocabulary as big as somebody else doesn't mean you're not smarter than them
Yeah.
or more academically capable, I guess I should say, instead of smarter.
Sorry, I'm writing that down because that's so good. Um, I found that was such a challenging part of my unlearning
Mhm.
inside of my work, especially like working at an organizational level, thinking about not only DI, but like growth and structure and all of that, is like the unlearning of almost that brainwashing that comes, think, especially at these like big universities, that ivory tower, that quite literally we were told we were the best of the best,
Yeah.
like all the time, all 4 years of college. They constantly were like, well, you have been chosen among the top of the student. And I think in the moment I received it as like, it was intimidating, like, oh man, you can't mess up, right? And then what I didn't realize is the indoctrination that's actually happening, right? Is that you are smarter, you are better, you are like, you should be commanding spaces, your hand should be going up first.
Mhm. Mhm.
um and it wasn't until, I mean, years, like 15, 20 years later, that I was like, oh, wait a minute,
Mhm.
Ceci, you're not smarter than any damn body, right? Like, and having to like catch myself actually espousing these beliefs without being conscious to it, almost.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
don't, did you ever experience anything like that?
I think that what I when I would hear that narrative of oh, Duke's the best, or it's the Ivy of the South. We call ourselves, they call them, the Duke calls itself the Kudzu League because it's not Ivy, but you know what kudzu is?
Uh-uh.
It's a plant that grows in the South. It's kind of invasive, but it
Oh.
mimics ivy in that it crawls.
Oh,
You've seen kudzu before. You
okay.
might not have called it that, but
Okay.
it's so we were the kudzu league, right?
That's
Um,
funny.
and but I just made that make. I never did buy into that's who I was.
Mm,
It was more of I'm just lucky to be here with all those people who are that. Does that make sense?
yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it was, so there was a part of me that is uh that has embraced the talents that I do have now that I couldn't when I was in college.
Mm,
Mhm.
that's powerful. That's powerful. What do you think you're preserving or have been preserving since then, that, let me ask a question. What are the skills or mechanisms or tips that you're preserving from that time at Duke, that time in grad school, that one still helps you in that moment with what is fennel, but also now that you're working with so many young people, what are the things that you've always held on to?
Mhm. That I love that question, and I have to think for a second.
Yeah, take your
I
time.
know what I know what it is that I try to help uh, students feel is you belong here, right? Like if
Yeah,
I can help kids get that they belong wherever they are, you belong there,
yeah.
and make your way, um, because you belong there.
Mm,
Um, you don't have to have permission.
yes.
You get to just be. I don't buy into a lot of, I don't know how much you know about Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck, um, she did the research on growth mindset,
Mm-hmm.
where she talks about how we praise kids wrong, like we tell them
Mm-hmm.
you're so smart, you're so capable, you're so da da da, and then they get to a point of I got to be this or this, rather than looking at I need a growth mindset where you did
Mm-hmm.
well on that. Let's see how your skills can be improving. I disagree when it comes to my Black children, especially. I want to tell them all the time, you are smart, you are capable, you are like they need it all because the world doesn't give them enough praise.
Yeah.
Um, and so I guess I would say my mantra are the things that I say to my students. When I show up at a meeting, and this is a great example. When the program in education had me come and speak at their graduation one year,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know that everybody wears their regalia. So I show up in
Mm,
my Black dress, and everybody else like, oh, okay, I missed the memo again. Like this is
mm.
the white people meeting. Like,
Right, 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 right,
but when I get in places like that, I'm like, and somebody should have told me. It's not my
right.
fault that I didn't know. Somebody should have told me.
Yep.
Um, so just stop making it about something being wrong with me, that I'm too
Mm,
country, or I'm too, too Black or not Black, whatever. That I am who I am, and I belong.
mm.
Mhm. I have to do that at home too, I have to say, when I go to visit my family, because my vocabulary is different now. I mean, I definitely say some words, and my sister Phyllis will be like, "What does that mean?" Uh, and I work really hard not to make anybody feel dumb for that. I'm like, "Oh, it
Yeah.
means this, and you might hear it here." And she'll send me text messages. I learned a new word today. The other day it was enigma.
Oh, okay.
That was her new word. She's like, I learned what that means. And she was like the bridge collapse in Philadelphia. That's an enigma.
That Negma, that was crazy.
So I love that. I mean, I guess that's the teacher in me getting
Yeah.
really excited. But sometimes when I go home, I feel more foreign. I'm never going to
Yeah.
let my family listen to this, by the way,
Okay.
because I don't want them to feel bad. But I
Yeah.
do feel more like my belief system is completely different.
Yeah.
And I know different, like I drink, my family doesn't drink at all.
Mm.
And yeah, I feel like a different person there. But what
Mm.
I've come to that this doesn't mean I'm fake when I go there, or that I'm fake here. I'm both people.
Right.
I just happen to live in this life more often. So when I go and I'm around folks who don't have the same daily practices as me, it's really weird.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
When you go back home, do you feel like you still have those connections though, or does it feel like a visit and then you're going back actually home?
Yeah, that I never thought about it like that. And I feel like my dad is looking at me and being like, what you talking about? Visit. That's your
He's
home.
like,
That is
what's
your
the
home.
answer? What's the you better answer correctly.
Yeah. So there's some things about it that I feel like I have two sisters and I love them so much. And then I have 6 nephews and a niece. And my nephews especially are just because I feel so much like Black men in this country are seen so, and my nephews are the sweetest, loveliest, wonderful people on earth, and that's not how the
Mm,
world sees them.
mm,
They don't see them like I do. So there's, when I get to, especially my baby nephews now, I have one of my nephews has 2 young boys, 5 and 3, and when I can sit on the floor and play with them, that feels very much at home.
yeah.
I do feel like my 5-year-old nephew right now, has developed a little bit of like a obsession with me, because I just show up, every from time to time, and he's like, oh, it's Aunt Toni, and she'll play with me and she'll spend time with me. So they picked me up from the airport, and he was in the back seat of the car, like in the back, and he kept going, Aunt Toni, hey.
Oh,
So there's a piece of me that feels so at home when
yeah.
I'm with them. But then there are other times when I'm like, oh gosh, I was at my mom's house for 3 months when the pandemic first started. I'd
Ooh.
never been in Reedsville for longer than a week since I was 17.
Ooh.
And I was there for 3 months, and I didn't drink for 3 months. I didn't, like
Ooh.
all the things that I would normally do, go out
Yeah.
to eat or whatever. There's one bar in Reedsville.
Wow.
And those pieces of who I'm a lot different now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's interesting is that I'm sure there's a lot of folks who can relate to like not wanting to go back to your childhood home, but I think the chasm almost widens when
Mhm.
you are the first, because not only are you bringing age, you're bringing world experiences and perspectives that are foreign, right? Like, and I think for a long time, it was almost like a grieving period
Mhm.
for me going back to my neighborhood in New York
Mhm.
and like grieving that I wasn't that person anymore that felt 100% at home. Now I still can feel, depending on the day, 60 to 70% at home. Like I'm not scared to walk the streets at night like many people are. Like I still feel at home enough to do that. But there's a big chunk that doesn't. And it's kind of sad, I feel like.
Yeah, it is. But I feel sad for them.
Say more
Um,
about that.
I feel like so my sisters, when they come visit, they follow me around Philadelphia like ducks. And my sister uses that language. She'll be like, I'm like a duck wherever we go. And before I even moved to Philadelphia, we would go to New York a lot. I was always obsessed with New York. I thought that's where I was going to end up living. That's a whole different story. But my sisters, I tried to teach them Manhattan is easy. There are numbers,
Right.
and these go this way, and it's a
Yep.
grid. And the 1, 2, and 3 train go on this side, and the 4, 5. Look, it is easy. But they never even would listen. They just would rather follow me,
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's something when I accomplished my understanding of the map of Manhattan, I felt really, successful
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
empowered to like take on this city on my own. They're not interested in
Yeah.
that, and I
Mm.
have to remind myself it's not wrong, but you are missing out on like I went to Japan to visit a friend. I didn't speak Japanese, but I navigated through Japan,
Right.
and you
Right.
walk away and you feel really, I don't know, empowered.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate that for them. And then I hate for them that they don't have an opportunity to know as many different kinds of people as I know. I think
Mm.
that was what shifted me from my religious beliefs. I became really good friends with some gay people, and
Mm-hmm.
I was working with gay people at my first job,
Mm.
and I was like, "This is not wrong.
Mm.
This person is nothing but love. Something is wrong with what I'm believing here."
Mm.
So there are times like that when I'm like, they're missing out. Um,
Yeah.
and so I do feel sorry for them sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. And
Mhm.
I know faith has been a biggie in terms of growth and first and all of that. And so I know, do you have a hard stop, by the way?
Mm-mm.
Okay. But I will be respectful of your time, I promise.
Okay.
Um, but I did want to touch on faith and religion. Um, you mentioned departing from like the church that or the religion that you grew up in. And you just mentioned sort of reference like the lack of exposure.
Mhm.
So I have like 45 questions, but I'm going to start with like two, which is one, tell us a little bit about the arc of your journey around faith and how that has sort of played a role inside of all of these things and shifted. And two, maybe in the latter half of your answer, how do you reconcile all of this, especially with your DEI work?
Mhm.
I'm going to
Mhm.
stop there because I have so many more questions.
Yeah. So I could tell a little bit about when I got my first job as a teacher at Carolina Friends School, which is a Quaker school, I learned about the Quaker faith, and I never knew much about it at all, except for they were the abolitionists, or they were the ones who marched with Dr. King, but I still thought they dressed up like the Quaker Oats man. Like I had no idea that there were folks who looked like me who were Quakers. But I felt like this whole new world of possibility with religion existed. And it will also, I could still be a Christian, because Quakers, come from Christianity, even though some people would really upset if you call them Christian and Quaker. So there was a safety behind exploring that religion. Because I was afraid, if I questioned my faith, I'd been told that meant you weren't saved and you were going to hell. So this is really scary to question, but I had a student, Emma, who it was around Christmas time, and we were studying Ireland. And I thought, okay, I think I'll just teach them the Christmas story, my fifth graders, the Christmas story. And I remember when I said that the Virgin Mary had Jesus, Emma said, people believe that? And I was so jealous of her at the time, because I would never have at 10 years old, but even now at whatever age I was, late 20s, early 30s, I'm like, I still couldn't say that. I still couldn't question anything. So that freedom that she had, I like coveted that. And so as I started to get older, I heard a minister do a sermon about hell. And I decided that I didn't believe in hell anymore. That was the biggest departure from my family. And I don't talk to them about that much, but I'm like, I don't believe that hell exists. And the next thing they'll say is, well, the Bible says, and I was like, and I don't believe the Bible literally. That's the two big things that sometimes I just have to bite my tongue when I'm with my family about. But it all started from Emma making that statement and me thinking, okay, I want to read some more. I want to kind of do a little bit of digging on my own. I want to do be prayerful about it as well. I still very much consider myself to be a spiritual person. I still identify as Christian because I do believe I follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, but I don't believe I don't believe everything that's literal in the Bible anymore. I kind of created my own, what is it that I believe? Like that's my question always, like, do I believe that or do I not believe that? It is okay to say one or the other. And I say, like, the biggest issue with my family, because I keep quiet about those two things, every now and then I'll let it slip out. The biggest issue that I can't be quiet about is sexual orientation. And even though I identify as heterosexual, I like stand with my friends who don't. And I'm not going to tell them they're going to hell. And I'm not going to tell them that I love the sin, hate the sinner, or flip that. But that's when I'll go fisticuffs with my sister, especially my middle sister. She is super uber religious, and feels that there is demonic. There's demonic. I have to get her to talk about it, but I'm like, my friends don't have demons in them. They are very spiritual people, just as you are a spiritual person. Or I'll say, she said, well, the Bible says, and I say, and there are over 30,000 verses in the Bible. I'm gonna focus on the ones about love. I'm gonna focus on the ones about, enjoying eternal life. I am not gonna focus on the 3 or 4.
Right. Total.
Yeah. So those are ways that that's the one thing I can't keep quiet about.
Yeah. And being that you are, I don't know the only, but among the first to step outside of that belief system, how has family members respond? Like, does that feel like, oh man, you abandoned us? Is it like, you left home, like Auntie Toni left home? Is it you're contaminated by the North? Is, and I guess I'm curious about their reactions, but I'm also curious about maybe the inner dialogue you've had about it over the years?
Mm. And I'm still going through it, right?
Yeah.
I'm still having I haven't figured out exactly what it is that I believe. I just feel comfortable enough to ask questions.
Okay.
And I found a pastor. I don't go to his church, but I know him, and I found myself in circles with him all the time. He's on a bunch of boards, and
Mm.
I got to know him before I knew he was a pastor.
Mm.
And I remember when I found out he was, I was like, oh man, I've said bad words around you. You must think I'm an awful Christian. And he's like, there is no such thing as an awful Christian. And so I feel like I can relate to him and have
Mm.
really open and honest conversations with
Mm.
him. I also have a very good friend who grew up Christian and then converted to Islam, and actually even became a Muslim imam for a
Mm.
while, and then has now identifies as agnostic. So he's
Okay.
had this religious journey. So he and I have a whole lot of conversations. We love and appreciate religion, and we also are not afraid to question it. So I'm
Mm.
still in the question. My family, they don't talk to me much about, so when are you going to get your life together? But I do live with my partner. We're not married. And so you'll hear little things every now and then. Little things get me, oh, y'all are shacking up, or
Mhm.
when we do have problems, well, if you weren't shacking,
Mm.
and he's also Muslim.
Mm.
So I think my family just thinks one day we're gonna both come to, be born again and come back. I think that's what they believe.
Mm.
So they put up with my heathenism.
Is that painful?
Um, I feel bad for. I'm not in pain about it. I feel more in pain for my nephews,
Mhm.
honestly, um, because they aren't given the opportunity to think differently. You
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
um, especially when it comes to like sex and you know, I just wonder, like, what is it like when you are growing up and you're told that you have to wait till marriage, but you're a 23-year-old kid.
Mm.
Um, by the time I was that age, I had started to realize that I wasn't as religious as they were. So
Yeah.
I do feel for them sometimes, and it makes me feel fake sometimes. At
Yeah.
Easter when we're holding hands and talking about he is risen, or my sister every Sunday sends me a text message that she calls Sunday SON day. Um, and so I do feel a little bit fake, like I have to fake it sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's painful,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I
I
don't want
get
to hurt
that.
them.
Yeah. I get that.
Mhm.
Does it ever I I mean this question not in a like sarcastic way, but like does the thought ever cross your mind, and this is something that every once in a while I think I've grappled with, like does the thought ever occur like was it worth it
Mhm.
to like step out of that
Mhm.
comfortable, secure, what clearly is a tight family unit that
Mhm.
loves each other, and to feel this distance, like, does it ever cross your mind, like, if it was worth it?
Um, I feel 100% like it was.
Mhm.
So I never feel like I never, like, I love my life.
Yeah.
And I love that I feel just freely self-expressed. And I think more than anything, it's like I wish for my family that they had more of that.
Yeah.
So I still am the only one to ever leave the country. Even little things like that. I took my sisters to New York last summer.
Mm.
My sister Livy just turned 50, and since Home Alone in 1992, she's been obsessed with the Plaza Hotel. And so I got us a room for a night at the Plaza.
Nice.
And I mean, if I had $3,000 to spend on whatever I wanted to, take me to Jamaica for a week. She wanted a night at the plaza, and she walked in the room and started crying.
No way. I love that.
But I said to my friend Rodney, said to me years ago, we were sitting in Puerto Rico, and the water was so beautiful, and I'm looking out and I'm like, why would I ever put my feet in water in South Carolina or North Carolina again? Like, is water supposed to look like this? I can see my feet. And I was like, and my sisters, they go to Myrtle Beach every summer. And they were like, he was like, because they never been here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Myrtle Beach is just fine for them.
Yeah.
And so I wish for them sometimes that they would be a bit more adventurous.
Yeah. I hear that.
Mhm.
Shout out to Myrtle Beach. I have fun there.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just not getting in the water. And I definitely don't get in the water here at, as they call it, the shore. I'll go and on the boardwalk. I might walk, like I might have my feet, but I would never swim in it. Water is not supposed to look like that.
I feel you. I feel you. I have like one or two more questions, and then I promise to let you go. As I'm listening to your story, I can't help but like, you keep saying like, I want that for them. I want that for them. I almost feel sorry. I think you said a couple of times. And I can't like think of the specific question, but there's something that feels, I know I said sad already, but it's not quite sad. It's almost like unfair, I guess is more of the word that I'm really thinking of. And I wonder, like, not to get too deep on the systemic level, but I had a conversation earlier that, you know, just really turned this idea first in the family on its head, and really pointed to the fact that this is a design, right? Like we know that the institution of the United States was created in a certain way, right? To have some people have access to things and some people not have access to things, and it's what perpetuates capitalism and whatnot. But then those of us who go beyond, right, the boundary that was sort of inscripted for us, and I, more and more we hear stories of folks navigating different worlds, are able to experience what you have described, right? Like different water, right? Like different spices, different religions, different ways of living, different ways of having intimacy. And while I can relate and celebrate with you, like, that's dope, right? That you're able to achieve that. There's also something frustrating and unfair, and I guess it is sad that we're the ones who like snuck in or navigated, or you did the right maneuvering, and were able to attain that, and the truth still remains that most folks do not.
Yeah.
And so I guess I don't know that I have a specific question, but that just sits with me as I continue to speak with people, as I'm hearing your story today. And like, that's the part that feels like needs healing or needs like naming. So I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts about that.
Yeah, it started reminding me of I was at a BSU meeting a few years ago, Black Student Union at my school, and back in the day, there was a teacher, Senora, who was white. Before there were teachers of color, she kind of put the Black kids under her wing, and they trusted her and like completely. So she came to BSU meetings, and there were some girls who were complaining about, said they were in class and they got heated about something. There was something, and so they got loud and expressive. And of course, folks were like, "Hey, put their hands up." Like that's too much. You're being aggressive, or whatever word they chose to use. And so the girls were debriefing it, and Senora says to them, "You get to express yourself however it is you want to. You are, and I just stopped her and I was like, "You're speaking from white privilege right now. They can't. They actually can't." I strongly believe that that I learned the system, but that I think may be why I'm so passionate about what I do for a living, because I feel like you have to understand the system while you're breaking it down. Like you have to do both. So I said to my girls, you got to play the game while you also are dismantling the game. So I think about that in order to get to get the voices that you need to have in the space. You got to learn the game, and there are benefits to knowing the game, and there are things you lose when you learn the game, but it is necessary to understand it if you're going to dismantle it.
Yeah. Does that make you have compassion for folks who have not played the game or not learned the game, or family members in the South, or does that make it easier?
It makes me I don't know. I think hearing you repeat back to me that I talk about feeling bad for my family sometimes, that they don't have some of the opportunities that I have, that's just hitting me, because I have never played it out in my head that way. I probably have never said that many times. I'll just be like, I wish they could come to Japan with me, and not, I wish they could do all these things. But I find that, if they don't, then they're fine too.
Yeah.
They'll have a great time in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
They'll be fine. So I have to just remind myself of that sometimes. It's okay. They're fine. And every now and then I get to, when I have extra money, I hope that God continues to bless me so that I can have enough money to do things like the Plaza again.
Yeah.
That was epic. We went to her first Broadway show.
Oh, that's the best.
Yeah. We stayed at the Plaza one night, and the other night we stayed at the DoubleTree. I was like, we can be wealthy one night, and we got to go back to being regular folks.
I like the DoubleTree because they always have cookies.
Yes. Ain't nothing like them chocolate chip cookies.
Tear them up. I appreciate you so much, just sharing so vulnerably. And I know that these topics are so complicated and emotional and heavy, and then also can bring about joy, and they can be sobering. So I just, I want to thank you for your sharing and your vulnerability. And I think what you said earlier about you get just as much from these sessions as you put in when you're doing your work. That's 100% how this conversation felt to me. And it's funny because you're a Southern girl now up in Philly, navigating that life and coming back to your family, like comparing, and I'm a Northern girl living in the South, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how to navigate these folks. So I find myself sort of doing the mental gymnastics in a different way.
Yes. Yes.
and like trying to find grace for everybody and understand like the history, and you're like, okay, I can do this.
I'm with you too. When I visit, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm reminded of some of the things that used to get said,
Right.
Some of the things I used to say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think for me, it's been like I've been in such a echo chamber for so long, living in the North, and having so many folks that just think the way I do and agree and vote the way I vote, and all the things. There's actually forced me to contend with how narrow-minded I actually am without realizing it. And that's been very sobering.
We get into our liberal bubbles. I live in a liberal bubble. My Facebook, anytime I get somebody on my Facebook, like an old high school friend who might be a little bit conservative, I want to follow them, because I'm like, what are y'all talking about?
Right.
Help me see how you could take, okay, that's how you got to that point. I still disagree with you.
Right.
But you're not stupid.
Right. Exactly. And it's been a challenge now. Like, so it'll be 5 years in 2 weeks that I've been here. And at first I was very resistant. I was like, oh hell no, ain't nobody gonna take away my values, ain't nobody gonna shift me away from what I've been doing my whole life, right?
Mhm.
And then over the course of the last couple of years, it's actually been, I think, a really fruitful challenge to take
Mhm.
on, to just
Mhm.
like really just meet people where they are at a real level, and still not be moved on my values, but learn how to connect with people when we fundamentally disagree on a lot of things. I don't know that I'm good at it, but it's a muscle that I've been working and that I've literally never had to work before.
Right, right. You know, something we didn't talk about, and I know our time is up, but I'm hoping that in one of your other episodes you've talked about it, and that is therapy,
Mm,
and like the way that my family, they never poo-pooed it, but it never was seen as that could be a possible
yeah,
avenue for going
yeah,
through stuff, and how liberating it is when folks can find, oh, that actually is really helpful.
yeah.
um that's another like key that I was able to open, like, oh, people just go to
Mm.
folks and talk about, like, when you talk about this situation being very cathartic, I mean, that's it's like little therapy sessions.
Oh yeah.
Talk about and figure out, oh wait, that happened, and I can trace things together. So yeah, I hope that you had some time talking to somebody about that.
Yeah, I don't know that we've had like an explicit conversation of like
Mhm.
first in the family to go to therapy, but I think it's come up a few. I
Mhm.
shut out my therapist like 17 times already because Lord, where would I be without her? But
Mhm.
I think it's just it's a really important point. And and I think for especially for folks who are navigating being the first in all of these levels and layers, like I do think it's an important tool to have in order to survive, right? Like those spaces, and not just survive, but thrive in those spaces in a way that feels integrated and true to who you are, all the pieces in
Yeah,
every chapter. So
absolutely.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
Um, last question.
Mhm.
Um, for folks who maybe are early on this journey, listening, um, who might be a Southern belle,
Mhm.
just exploring beyond the Southern norms,
Mhm.
what advice do you have? What tips? And maybe what would you have wanted to hear when you were leaving
Mhm.
what is it? 4-Hers.
I love 4-H. Um, I think the biggest thing that I would say is be unapologetic.
Mm,
Find a way that you can fully express who you are.
mm,
Um, because I always felt like I've often felt like I was apologizing. I'm apologizing for being too black or not black enough, or being too hippie, or too fat, or too whatever is
mhm,
the two TOO.
mhm,
And I have gotten now to a point that I don't apologize for it,
mm.
you know, most of the time, and on the best of days.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't get, I'm still inside, there's the little Tony that comes out from time to time, but I
Mhm,
try my best to live by that mantra of, okay, I belong here. I don't have to apologize for asking for the seatbelt extension on the airplane. It's their fault for not making the seats big enough.
mhm.
So it's those, just finding ways to be unapologetically yourself. Yeah.
I love that.
Mhm.
That is the perfect way to close us out. Thank you, Toni. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
This was
This
awesome. I appreciate it. If you need something else, let me know. I love talking about
girl.
myself. I'm an expert at that.
Careful now, because I'll keep you on here till 11:30.
All right, friend. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you so much. If folks want to reach out, if there was a question that I didn't ask, is there a way that folks can contact you or follow you?
Absolutely. My email address is Toni Graves Williamson at Gmail. And Tony was with an I. Um, and I'm not followable. I got rid of my Twitter account. So
Congratulations.
mhm. I have an Instagram, but I've maybe made, in the 10 years that I've had Instagram, maybe 47 posts. So I'm not very good at this, at the social media. I still call it the Facebook and the Instagram. You know, when you put the in front of it, it's like, but I most definitely would appreciate having questions come at me through email.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Toni. And thank you for just showing up fully and reminding us to be unapologetic.
Mhm.
And I wrote down, you got to play the game while dismantling the game.
Mhm.
I need that on a poster somewhere.
Yes. Yes.
I'm so grateful for you and everything that you are and everything that you do and everything that you've seen and are doing now. So I just gratitude and love.
Back
So
at you. I'm very excited for this series. So keep me in the loop.
thank you so much. And I'll keep you posted. So what I'm taking away from my conversation with Toni today is a lot of like hope and grounding. That might sound a little cheesy, but what I appreciated about Toni is the way she's living into the ideals that she is bestowing upon her students, but that also she's had to learn and collect over the course of her lifetime in order to truly be unapologetically her, as she said. Um, and I just appreciate that from the start of the interview, she named that she and her dad started in a different place, right? And it's such an important grounding to remember that we've all started in different places, and then like we're on different places on our journey, which I think is probably often where people start, right? Like they say, oh, okay, we have different lives, but the beginning is so important. And I appreciate Toni just naming that it's okay to be on these different paths, but um, it's also okay to integrate all of those pieces of you and not apologize for it. And then also shed the pieces that don't work anymore. And I also really thought it was important to name how painful that can be. So I'm just thankful that Toni was so willing to share that vulnerability, and for so many of us who have been the first to do all these things, whether it's college or marriage or house ownership or whatever have you, um, there's so much grief that comes with letting go of the way things used to be, the person you used to be, the way you used to think. So I hope that that resonated with you listening. And if there was something else that stayed with you or moved you, or if there was a question that you wish I would have asked, please share. Please share them with me on social media at First in the Fam on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and you know, and share this episode with somebody else who might get it or might find it interesting or might be able to relate. Because this is a complex journey we're on, friends, and as you know, you're not alone. Um, so I just want to thank again um, Toni Williamson. It was such a great interview. I also want to thank my producer, Copy, the first in the family to be a producer. Big shout out. And of course, I want to thank you, our listeners. I'm so deeply grateful for your generosity of time, your listening. And like I always say, my hope is that this podcast will provide a safe and supportive space for folks like us to just navigate all of these layers of being the first and navigating the real, sometimes painful impacts of breaking those patterns. So thank you so much. My name is Ceci, and this has been First in the Family. And please tune in next week to see who is first. Bye, y'all.